Welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, April 9th, 2018 at 7:02 p.m. And we have 4 committee meetings tonight, the first of which is the Transportation Committee, and Councilmember Katsas is chairing, and then members McGee, Grace, and Crowell will be joining them for the discussion.
President Isley, thank you. I think this is going to actually be fairly quick this evening. We just had two points to speak to tonight, and one of them I learned over the weekend that administration is not ready to speak on. So that is the ACC Title 35 cable communications. We've decided that we're going to pull back and have that discussion at a future date. So the second point that we have, this is. As the topic suggests, is an annual procedure. This is annual paving. And so this one, I did have a conversation just briefly with Andy Stone about this, and I'm going to look to administration so they can correct me as I say stuff. This is going to be $700,000, $400,000 of which is from an OPWC contract that was approved I believe last summer. And so we're looking at, this is going to be paving surfaces within the city of Athens. As of right now, we do not have a schedule of streets for repavement, and this is just asking to release those funds to do our annual project, which I assume will start when summer starts, throughout the summer and into fall. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Mayor?
Not a question.
Yes.
But just a little further clarification is, Member Katsas, as you mentioned, $400 will come from OPWC, $300,000 will come from Street 220, as well as Street Rehab 572. And likely what will happen is for this level of street repaving, and there's going to be a street tour coming up this weekend, I believe, and looking at the streets that are going to be targeted, those that rank somewhere in the 4 or below. I don't think we really have any 3 streets. Andy Stone uses a scale of 9 to 0. And so for something that is in that 4 range, those are streets that need to be resurfaced. And so once we get that list together, we'll make sure that council has that. The other thing too is that repaving will probably start in mid-July. That's typically when we do it, and we really get things cranked up for doing the annual street repaving.
Okay. Yes, Member McGee.
2 questions. One is State Street. Do we have any idea when that street would be taken care of, since it is so incredibly rough right now? And then the second question is, just for the public's knowledge, is this a bigger expenditure than is normal for this kind of street process, so that the citizens will know that we're making a real effort to cover these terrible potholes from the winter?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, let me start with the East State Street. The East State Street improvement, that will take place. That's a $6.2 million project, in which a lot of that is coming through grant funding, as well as the TIF, which is on East State Street. The repaving portion of it will start. Milling and paving will be June and July when we really get into that. Maybe a little bit sooner, but at this point, that's what we're tracking. In terms of this amount of money and street repaving that took place last year, let me go back to 2016. 2016, we paved about 4.6 miles of street. 2017, we paved 9.7, I believe, miles of street. So we really increased the level of street repaving throughout the city. Again, we'll put together the list and see how far that'll go with the $700,000 that'll go towards street repaving. But this is something that we do annually, and I believe we do a great job at getting the streets repaved. This past winter was a harsh winter. We lost a lot of patches in the city. That's what happens in the world of science when you have, freezing and thawing, and then refreezing again. And having snow plows running over the top of that, to where you start having patchwork pop up. But East State Street, again, it's happening this summer. Extensive work on East State Street, but we're also going to be getting West Union done and the Richland Avenue down to the South Y, or down to Pomeroy Road, where from Canterbury on up to Pomeroy. So a lot of work this summer when it comes to streets. But again, this is for the street repaving that we see on a lot of the residential streets throughout the city that need some help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to clarify, I believe last year was it 600,000 that we did for street paving?
You know, member Constance, I don't know off the top of my head how much we had appropriated for last year's resurfacing. I think it was higher than that, quite honestly, but I can get that number for you if you want me to.
Not super necessary, no. Okay. I think, and with that, if there are no other questions, we are done.
We'll move on to Planning and Development Committee. And that's Councilmember Fall that's chairing that, and then Councilmember Reisner, McGee, and Grace as the other members.
Sure. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The first order of business, the downtown redevelopment districts will be canceled due to a sickness of our star witness sort of person who's coming forward. So that will give opportunity for everybody to read all the information that has been sent out on the drive and to formulate questions that you may have of Sarah. Next is TS Tech, which is trim. They make seat covers and stuff, special seat covers for Honda. Honda or Toyota? I'm not remembering.
I think.
Honda. Okay. This is a piece of property over by Beacon and Morrison Gordon School that is a land donation to help enable the county and the city to be able to establish an EMS headquarters. Because right now, much of the EMS facilities are kind of spread out and in really unpleasant situations. TS Tech is coming forward with a possibility of a land donation to be able for this to happen. I went on a tour with that last year, and I was struck by the fact that it's gone all the way up into the hierarchy to the board of directors at Honda because they were really concerned, and they're very good about doing community give back. So, Mayor, would you like to say some stuff about this?
I would, thank you. Again, as Member Fall indicated, when we receive this property, or when it comes to council for acceptance of the property, it's about 13 acres, a little more than 13 acres. I have been in communications with the county commissioners, as well as Chief Caleb's with EMS, to partner with them in order to have the possibility of an EMS station being located there at the end of Kenny Drive, which is where this property is located. The remainder of the property would be used for fire training. We don't have a fire training facility here in the city of Athens, and this will really help with our ISO rating. If we can get our ISO rating, if this can alter our ISO rating, it's good for us when it comes to insurance for the city of Athens. So Chief Reimer has been involved in this, and as Member Fall indicated, this has gone all the way up to the head of corporate in Japan to donate this piece of property to the city of Athens. We did have to work through some things. I think, Council, you have an MOU that was put together because there were some interesting things with this parcel of land. It's been a long process. It's been a 2-year-long process to make this work, and we're one step closer to where, again, what you will see is what will be needed as we move forward is for the city council to accept this property.
Thank you. Questions?
How much much land are we talking about, acreage?
13.1 acres, I believe. It's a rather large parcel. It has, again, access off of the end of Kenny Drive. TS Tech, interestingly, with this whole process, part at the very end of Kenny Drive is will be initially owned by TS Tech. It was something that happened way back in 2007, 2006, in that time frame, where they had owned the end of Kenny Drive, and now it was owned by another property owner. So that's all being straightened out. And the other thing with this piece of property is there's also frontage on Elliotsville Road, undeveloped, but it's there to where if we were to decide to put access into that, what would that be, the northeast quadrant of the property, we could do that.
There's also a pipeline that goes across part of the property. Also goes behind the two schools. You have to mention. So that was another issue.
It is.
There's always been some talk of consolidating the fire department stations into a central area. Would this be amenable to that?
Well, that's why I said it's possible that EMS is interested in that location, that being the TS Tech property. Once we acquire it, they're interested in locating an EMS station there. But as I understand it, they're interested in looking at several different places. They have to be able to respond within a certain time frame, much like our fire department does when they're making calls.
Right.
And this would really help with being able to respond, anywhere in kind of the southwest quadrant of the county to reach out to New Marshfield quickly. I know that they've looked in the other corner of the city as well to locate another station. So, but that's their call in terms of where they locate. There is a possibility that we could have a shared use facility somewhere in the city of Athens as well. That was an concept that came forward a couple of years ago.
Other questions? Okay. So we will go forward with that. There's no more discussion. The second actionable item on our agenda is a relatively simple right-of-way issue. We give 10-year revocable licenses for use of our right-of-way, which is a set described distance from streets, and kind of change all over the city because the city is old. It's very organic, let's just say. So this one is for 131 West State Street, and it's for parking next to the RBC Architects building. And
134 Columbus Road.
oh, well, then this is wrong. Oh, it's the mailing address.
Right.
No. Okay. So this has come forward before with other entities. Last week we discussed a right-of-way issue with a fence. People wanted to put a fence in the right-of-way for decorative purposes. So for this one, it's building. There's building and parking that is necessary for that building, and that business has to be in the right-of-way, which a lot of the Columbus area businesses already have right-of-way. So this is 10 years. So pretty straightforward. Everybody signed up, and all the minimal things that the city requires have been signed off. Questions? Okay. Thank you. And my committee.
Okay, thank you. Next committee is City and Safety Services, and it's council members Butler, Katsas, and Paul.
Thank you, President Leslie. This evening, we just have two items on the agenda. The first being the garbage recycling contract with Athens Hocking Recycling Center. And then the second item is an acknowledgement about the compost pilot program. So there's a request from the city administration regarding our contract, which expires this June 30th. So we need to renew it this July. The previous contract with Athens Hocking Recycling was over $900,000, $992,502.98 to be exact. There is a likely increase in that request, and the new contract could be as much as $1.3 million based on the changes in recycling costs that we're seeing across the country. Trying to see if there's any other relevant data there. This is information shared with us from the city administration, specifically the City Service Safety Deputy Director, Ron Lucas, and then I did speak as well with City Service Safety Director, Haran Mosley, about this too. Any other questions or comments or clarifications from the mayor too? Yes, Councilmember Fall, followed by Councilmember Acosta.
I think that what I would like to see is the reduction of tipping for like Uptown and solar boxes. How our tipping, the change of tipping fees over time with all the different zero waste projects that we have done.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because I would like to see how much that has changed, and if you don't tip, if you don't put garbage into a garbage dump into a solid waste facility, you do save money because tipping fees are quite expensive. So I think that that would be something that I would like to see out of this. And also the recycling kind of changes over the year. I know that recycling rates have been really steady. It'd be nice to know rate, but also maybe a forecast of what people think that recycling costs are going to provide for the city in the future. How much is our recycling worth? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Acosta.
Member Butler, thank you. Please give me that first number again that you said our rate was last year.
Correct, thank you, yes. According to the data in the email, the current contract base, the contract with AHRC is $992,502.98.
So roughly a $300,000 increase?
Well, and let me clarify, I apologize, because I offered the high amounts, which is, it could be as high as 1.3 million, but it could be 1.145,904.86.
Okay. And this will be coming from the garbage fund. So, I mean, and I know the garbage fund is flush, but are our current rates able to absorb these an increase of, what is that? I mean, just off the top of my head, 15%?
And that's a fair question. Maybe I'll digress here a little bit. My understanding in speaking earlier today with the City Service Safety Director who had recent eyeballs on, and we do have the auditor here as well too, but that we should be okay in that line. That fund line.
Okay.
If the auditor wants to add anything else too. Thank you, Auditor Heck.
It does feel like a substantial increase in costs, but it's the price of doing business, and I think Member Fall's requests are good information for us to try to figure out. But yes, that is a healthy fund right now. Mm-hmm. However, if we don't change our costs, it won't stay that way. As you said, it could be as much as $300,000 increase in 1 year. However, as the mayor said, there are other things that we might start charging for to offset costs. And, so we'll have to see. Mm-hmm. But we're not in any danger of not being able to pay our contract if we go forward.
Okay. Thank you, Auditor Heck. Councilmember?
And we should explain that the garbage fund is proprietary. You cannot change, you can't use that money for street paving or stuff at the, doing street marking or any of that sort of stuff. It has to be spent on garbage and garbage-related
Yes,
issues.
you're exactly right there. Same as water, sewer, parking garage. Those are considered proprietary funds. And whatever money they make has to stay within that fund. Can't be used for anything else, any other department.
And when we set rates, if we change rates, we have to do it through council, and that is a whole process that has to be done. So it's not like the rates go up overnight.
Right.
Make sure people
That's
know
true. That would all be out there, and it is a process because there are different rates. What most of us know is what we pay for our individual household, but the rates change for businesses and for apartment complexes and things like that. So council absolutely has to be involved in that process. And if the time comes and we want to do that based on increasing costs, there would be a process to look at what would be reasonable or necessary, I think.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Marcotte.
And I think kind of that overlying thing is that this is getting more and more difficult. I mean, I'm starting to learn that our recycling isn't getting accepted, and we're finding that it's getting harder and harder to figure out these channels. So this isn't necessarily surprising that that you're seeing a change in the numbers. It's just I think it's a challenge that I think almost every city's going to probably have here as we move forward. Not only with recycling, but also with disposal of waste. So.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you had to be the bearer of this bad news.
That's all right. Thank you.
But I think it always bears to say that you reduce, reuse, and recycle. I mean, the city has been supporters of the Reduce Zero Waste initiative, and we are moving towards that, and that's part of the sustainability plan of Athens is to move towards zero waste.
And I hope that's achievable.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anything from the mayor's office?
No, other than I agree with what everyone's saying. It's, it would be grand to have zero waste, and that's the goal, which is a great segue into the next item that you have.
Thank you. And on that note, the second bullet item this evening is a discussion pertaining to the compost curbside pilot program. There's a request again here from the administration in seeking funding for this program, which would include an additional contract amount with Athens Hocking Recycling of $46,000. We did hear a presentation fairly recently about attempting to implement this pilot program, and I believe that has the support of the mayor and the administration, and that this is their request to help make that happen in conjunction with Rural Action's interest.
Right.
Any questions or comments on that? Mayor, if you'd like.
Just to follow on, yeah, this is working with Rural Action and AHRC, for a composting program. It's interesting, the heaviest waste that we create is typically compostable materials. They have a lot of water content in them. And so what we'll do is we're hoping to have at least 200 residents in the city be part of this pilot program when it rolls out, or more, if more decide to sign on. And we're hoping to pretty much have 50 plus individuals, residents, in each of the wards, so that we get a broad swath of the city and see how this goes for 6 months. AHRC has already kind of put together the schedule that they can work with while they're going around and picking up recyclable materials to also be collecting in 5-gallon pails. Anybody's who's part of this pilot program picking up their their compostable materials. There's also what will be going out is a whole list of what is going to be in this pilot for compostable materials. In other words, sticks, limbs, branches, things of that nature will not be accepted into the pilot program because that takes a whole different level of composting to get that type of material to compost. It'll mostly be kitchen scraps, vegetables, things of that nature. But there'll be more to come on that. Rural Action will be doing a full-blown educational component along with the pilot so that everyone's understands what can be thrown in the compost bins and what cannot.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember.
I think this is a great project. Because composting, I know for some people is more difficult than because they may have a size limitation in their garden. Or, I'd like to see, I think that this would be a really great, a model program, and building on that is looking at our ultimate goal with composting is composting in businesses and such too. And so I think that establishing a skeleton of composting in the city, not only will we educating people and doing the stuff that we need to do with reduction of waste and reusing of waste, but also it will help to be a model for other communities to go forward with this sort of thing, which kind of follows on our curbside recycling, which was also a model for towns and cities in Ohio. So I think it's good.
Thank you. Any other council members?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I was wondering, I'm sorry.
At the mic, if you can.
You have to go at the mic.
Yeah, the podium, thank you.
Where do I have to go?
The podium, thank you, yeah.
And just give us your name and address, and if you represent a group.
I don't Leslie Fleming, 1 Kent Drive in Athens. I don't represent anyone, except that I participate in the program of having composting picked up. I'm one of the 20 families that do. So I wondered what was happened to the people who are already doing composting, both those of us who are having it picked up and those who are bringing it to the farmer's market.
Thank you, that's a great question. I don't have a clear answer on at the moment for that. There might be a discussion we need to pursue with administration as well as with Rural Action. Mayor, if you'd like.
Sure. Well, that program is under AHRC for the composting that you're doing. What part of this process as we go forward and get information out to those who might be interested in being part of this pilot program, we will set up, there will be flyers down there at the farmer's market pickup site indicating to those who drop off their compost there that we will go around, AHRC will go around through the neighborhoods and can pick up theirs at the doors or on their driveway, wherever, as opposed to them having to bring it to farmer's market. And then for someone like yourself, if you do have it picked up at your house, that still will be picked up. So that won't change. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, for clarifying and helping us out there.
Certainly.
Educational moment for all of us. I believe that concludes, unless there's any other comments or questions, that concludes the committee meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we'll move on to Finance and Personnel Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Reisner and has Councilmember Butler and Crowell.
Thank you, Madam President. Like just about everyone else, I only have a couple of items. First one is appropriations, and I have on my list here, and we have the administration and the auditor who can always chime in here. $20,000 to the sewer fund for an unexpected cost of sewer maintenance due to the demolition of a building on 88 East State, resulting in the destruction of an unknown sanitary sewer, which has subsequently been replaced in a different location. Either you care to speak to that, or obviously it's a necessary item to be done. If we've already done it, we need to appropriate the money.
You know, I can speak to it again for us to with a destruction of an unknown sewer,
right.
Which was of much surprise to our engineer Andy Stone. that we do need to appropriate $20,000 from 750 TC 300, you know, for the work going on that with the sewer.
Any questions from committee on that? Little stinky item. We'll bring it forward Monday. And I see $4,000 to the Law Administration Building Improvement Fund for ADA accessibility doors to the walkway between the city building and the Law Administration Building. That's the transparent airlock tube thing that connects the two buildings. I know where you're going on that because those doors are very heavy. I have trouble with them myself sometimes, and I can imagine how it would be when it comes to ADA compliance. So my question is $4,000 adequate for that, since it's both doors?
Well, we took it up to 4,000. The quote that we received was for 3,600, but you never know when something else needs to be done with that, so that's why we're asking for 4. This will be both doors. There's 2 heavy doors to get through that tube, and we do have individuals with mobility needs that this is a much needed ADA improvement between the 2 buildings. I will point out that with that, there are some challenges with the tunnel, not a tunnel, with the passageway itself.
Exactly.
But this is, getting these door actuators in will be a vast improvement to what has been done in the past.
Well, that hallway has a tight 90-degree turn going from this building into the to the door, and I'm wondering, will that have to be modified in any way?
No. We looked at that too in terms of the width of the hallway that you're referring to.
Yes.
And it should be okay in coming through.
Questions?
It is okay.
Auditor, do you have anything to chime in on that? Okay. Next item, promotions or promotion. We have a new service safety director, Andy Stone, who's coming in, and at a rate that's 10% higher than the rate that his current position is as Director of Engineering Public Works. We've debated this, we've talked about it, and so on. So, anything new to add to it other than necessary legislation?
I don't have anything to add to it other than to request from council to authorize 10% above current pay, his current salary is when he becomes service safety director.
Auditor?
Just a reminder about how the mayor came to that is we did change the promotion section of our non-union fringe benefit package. It has been stated for years that they would make 5% more than the people under them if they moved into a supervisory position. And as you know, the administration has come and asked for some other increases for department heads recently, and so we made that adjustment. That ordinance just came through council, if you remember, that they could request up to a 10% increase. The 5%, they can go up to 5% without going through council, but they could also go up to 10% above with council's permission, and that's why. So the 10% is a limit, but it still needs council approval. So I think we are trying to set some controls on that. And so yeah, I can finish that. And I thought we had one other appropriation. Just say it.
Under promotions?
No. Or appropriation.
Another appropriation. You can finish your appropriation. I mean your promotion discussion, and then I'll ask about that. I'll just say.
Okay. Mayor, did you want to talk any more about future promotions and so on?
I do.
We don't need to name names or anything. Just
well, we're not going to.
Exactly.
There are some interesting things that have come out of the amendment that occurred. It's Ordinance 34-18. And that is that we have other promotions that are happening in the city, in particular within the fire department, a promotion of a lieutenant to captain. And this creates some interesting challenges with that because of some of the other benefits that are, or the salary of these individuals as we move forward. And so we're going to, you know, I'm going to be looking to, we need to, I'm going to ask council to authorize for this promotion from lieutenant to captain to be based on this individual's salary plus 5% above that, as opposed to going 10%. 5 will get us to where we need to be. I don't know if the auditor wants to.
No, we landed on that. Aside from just the 5 and 10% increases, there was a previous change in language regarding what was calculated in police and fire base rates for the captains who are no longer part of the union. And in the past, we've calculated some other benefits that they get. Those were taken out. But I think we might have to rethink that so that we have people that will want to move up. But I think right now we've agreed on how we're going to calculate a captain in the fire department's base rate and stick with the 5%.
Okay.
But we might want to change some of that language.
Are we?
Yeah, I want to echo what the auditor just said, is that we do need to look at this ordinance again and revisit it, because it does pose some challenges when you're wanting to promote somebody into a critical position. They're coming from union to a non-union position, and it creates its own set of concerns for me.
Right.
I know it creates concerns for the auditor in terms of how do you incentivize someone to want to take on that role, yet they could potentially be taking a pay cut, which doesn't work.
Yes, we've been through this before with the chiefs, and it's those are the two departments where it's an issue because of their scheduling and things like that, and the way other things are calculated for them, and it's not always worth their while to take that position. However, the ORC has some pretty clear, promotion language itself that we need to follow. So we'll just bring that back. But I think we've come to a solution for the most immediate one anyway.
Okay. Mayor.
Just one last thing for council. I know that I've mentioned this before, and that is for the lieutenant being promoted to captain. We do have an ORC time urgency that there's between when the civil service exam was certified. We have essentially 10 days. And so likely when this comes forward on Monday, we're going to have an emergency clause and suspend on its first reading to get this through so we can meet ORC's law.
Wow. Member Butler.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Auditor, for sharing all this with us. It's a ton of information when looking at these contracts and considering the challenges of moving from, as you acknowledged, a union position to non-union and being in an administrative position and leadership, and we know that that's necessary. We know that it's healthy for our departments to have strong leadership and for promotion within. So I support and applaud your leadership on that. My guess is that we're probably running into challenges associated with longevity and education as the two.
You're exactly right, Member Butler.
Thank you.
Items that most employees don't get.
Right.
We phased out a longevity for a lot of employees, but if they still work for the city, and in the non-union, we rolled it into their base salary. But people who've been here for a while and are still getting that don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose that education pay. It can be substantial if they have a college degree. It's not just license. They get something for licensure, but also if they have a degree. And so it adds up, and it makes it not necessarily worthwhile to take that supervisory position or move up in one for not very much money. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Any other question?
No.
Nothing more.
Well, we might have decided not to do this yet, but the fencing at the cemetery, we're going to go ahead and do that or not? You can say no.
Might as well talk about it.
I had it on my list, but
Why
we can
not?
talk about it. It might or might not be in the ordinance next Monday. How about
Right,
that?
let's stick with that, because we're still looking into that, the fencing around
Yeah.
West Union, isn't it?
Yeah, around the cemetery.
Between us and the
Fair
Fairgrounds.
board. Part of it is on the Fair Board side. There's been, to my knowledge, no response from the Fair Board. The other part of it is along the Union Street side that we are also responsible for. And so the total amount needed is going to be over $9,000. So, and of course, we have the cemetery in our general fund because the revenue that we bring in is
dead.
doesn't cover the cost of maintenance and equipment and things to take care of the cemetery. So there's really no pot of money there for cemetery things. It would just be general fund money.
What's the fence made out of?
It's a chain link fence.
Chain link? Okay. It's
I
not
think
like
the one
wrought
in the front
iron.
is iron,
The one in the front, yeah, it is iron.
but the other one is chain link.
You know, the cemeteries are, as Auditor Heck was just indicating, it's a challenge. It's challenging as we have to put revenue into that. We do, that's our responsibility. Because we most recently, as council knows, were in receivership of West Union Cemetery. We've had West State Street Cemetery for some time, but there's a lot of work that has to go into maintaining them.
Right.
There is no room in West State, or the West Union Cemetery to intern anybody, other than maybe urns, which we do, but.
Ever crop?
Are there any regulations about fencing around? I mean, I know there's no fencing on the Schaefer Street side of that cemetery.
There is not. I don't know that there's regulation about that, other than, fencing up against the public right-of-way, but I don't think that ever had fence along there because of that steep slope, that, other than maybe keep small children from rolling down the hill or something.
It's probably more to keep people out, but yeah, it's probably not as necessary because you'd have to walk uphill to get in there from the Schaefer Street side. But
Well,
I don't know about that.
I think Member Crowell's bringing up a good point. Is the fence, say, along the fairground side even necessary? I mean, is it really?
Oh, I would think so.
Well, okay, well, what reason would there be for a fence? Let's just think out of the box here for a second. Why would I want a fence
People
there?
cutting through there.
Okay, that's a legitimate.
I mean, that happens at West State Street.
Prevent
Didn't we
vandalism.
close the one end of West State because people go through there and I don't know who, but sometimes people stop and party and leave trash. And so, because there's a throughway really through the West State Cemetery.
Yes.
And so you can walk through from one end to the other. So I think just having one entrance and exit maybe keeps people from going in and hanging out. I don't know. Might want to ask our lands and buildings.
Yeah, we could. I mean, I understand your question. I think it's an interesting one, but I think I agree with the auditor, is that you could inadvertently create a cut through to where people are just going through to go to the apartments that are on the north boundary of that cemetery, or cutting through the other way, cutting through to get to the fairgrounds during county fair season or things like that. It's, it helps control traffic that would otherwise.
Well, if we can justify it, just on public safety grounds alone, that's more than legitimate. That's a good question.
Can I add one other thing about revenue and expenses? I did research this after our meeting, our auditor's meeting last week, although I forgot to bring my paperwork. But I believe that we have spent about $86,000 for personnel and upkeep of the cemetery in the last couple of years, a little over 2 years, probably 2.5 now. And we did receive $70,000 from the Union Street Cemetery Board, and then another $3,000, I think, after they did the final closeout of their books. So, we are at this point already in the hole, about $13,000, and anything else that we spend will be added, expense for the city.
So unlike our proprietary funds, say for street and water and so on, which if they're not showing a profit, they're certainly not losing money because they're paying for themselves as they go along. With the cemetery, we have no source of revenue. We have no we have no tax.
Yeah.
There's nothing, no levy of any kind.
There's no way to increase the cost. We do get a small amount of money for people who already own plots. Selling the plots would be where we would make money, but it's and that includes whatever revenue we've received for that. But yeah, we don't really have any way to increase that our revenue for the cemetery in particular. So
and who forced the city to take it over?
The state.
The state of Ohio.
Yeah.
So the state of Ohio said you must take over the cemetery and maintain it, even if it is at a loss. And by the way, we're not going to give you any money to keep maintaining it. So we're going to shift the responsibility of the graveyard over to you.
If we were in the county or in the township, they have the ability to put a tax on the rolls to cover their expenses, but the city does not.
Mm-hmm.
And so unless we could get the township to do that, and I guess we could try, but I think they would have to keep in mind their own taxes for the other things they want to do. We're all only allowed to have so much on the tax rolls for revenue. We can't just put them on there as much as we want. And there are limits to the overlapping tax districts. And so they would be giving up some of their ability to add new taxes on to their revenue by allowing us to put one on.
I see.
That's interesting.
So yeah, there's just a lot more to it, and I'm not sure why cities aren't allowed to do something to do that. It's basically a law. If there's a private cemetery and their board is divesting themselves, giving up ownership, then we are required to take that over. The ORC.
So council, just know that we're exploring all kinds of things, you know, that we could do to help offset the costs. And we're also bearing in mind that there is one more cemetery in the city of Athens
It is privately owned, but who knows what could happen with that in the future. So we're looking at a lot of different possibilities.
Well, I think we beat it to death, so we can move on. I have nothing further, unless there's another appropriation hiding out there somewhere.
All right. On that note, we'll adjourn for the evening. At 7:49 p.m. We'll see you all next Monday night. Thank you.